Hello, Alabama fans, and welcome to the Bama Online Recruiting Show. I'm BOL publisher Tim Watts, and with me, of course, is Andrew Bone, the BOL recruiting editor. We've had a busy little weekend here, Andrew. Last official visitor weekend of the year. It went slow, but it went fast. I mean, it just came and went really fast. Official visits are done, decisions are on the horizon, and we've seen a lot of activity since Sunday. Just Sunday alone, we've seen a lot of activity with three commitments, two guys committed elsewhere, three guys committed elsewhere. Just a lot of activity at this time of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you look back to May 30th, and we were like, "Oh, this is gonna be it's gonna be a long month." With so many official visits, guys coming in throughout the month, leading up to the dead period, which started on Monday, and we saw pretty much all of Alabama's top targets that were on campus throughout the month. We saw a few camps, and three high school camps, but you know, we saw the majority of those guys that came in were underclassmen, but there were a few guys that received offers this month, like Zay Hall, Owen Cable, who made it to Tuscaloosa this past weekend. Those were guys that kind of emerged late, but now are considered bigger targets for Alabama. So been a busy month, and we should see some more movement after a few days of. I guess they've received three commitments since Sunday, so should see some more this week.
There's been a lot of discussion because the three commitments were three stars. I have a lot of thoughts on this. Let's get into that just a little bit. I think Alabama fans are going to have to get used to something other schools got used to last year. Three stars are a big part of everyone's class. This isn't something new. Alabama fans, I looked it up. Out of the top 10 last year, Alabama had the second least amount of three stars. So Alabama fans are adjusting that to a little bit. But when you look at the numbers, Texas had seven. They had the number one class. The number one five class in the country had eight. The number six class in the country had eight. The number eight, nine, and 10 had double digits, 10, 9, and 11, respectively. So these three stars are a big part of filling out a class. And they've always been a big part of it. Alabama's never signed just four or five stars. They had some great classes. Um, they've never signed just four or five stars. And my last thought on this, Andrew, is that June's three star doesn't necessarily mean next February's three stars. These are not just three-star guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've always found it interesting that people get. I mean, I get it when you get upset that you're not getting a 4 or 5 star recruit. These are opinions and projections that one or two people are making. As far as the rankings, it's one of those situations where you look at the offer list, the schools that are really pushing hard for these players, and you look at JJ Finch. I mean, 3 star kid, but you know who really wanted him? Alabama, Michigan, Miami, Tennessee, LSU, and I look at a lot
Florida,
of,
yep.
and I look at the list of guys who are ranked ahead of him. Uh, they've missed something somewhere because you have no offense to some of these guys, but you have a Temple commitment and three FIU commitments. I mean, you have all these different guys that are ranked ahead of a player that probably hasn't been properly evaluated. He's 6'3", 278 pounds, and a guy that all these schools that are known for having and developing really good defensive fronts wanted. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned about JJ Finch. Jabari Barnett, 6 foot, 215-pound running back that missed the majority of his junior season due to an injury. Had it close to about 250 yards rushing during his junior season. Alabama evaluated him. They checked on everything health wise. This was a guy. If they were going to take two backs in this class, obviously EJ Kroll is a guy that they really want. But if they were going to take two, this was a guy that they felt like they could get. Maybe not as expensive as some of these others, but there's still cool schools that were pushing hard to keep them. You don't think Illinois had a good NIL offer on the table for him, or some of these Florida schools that were pushing for him? Yes.
And you know what we're not noticing, we're not really talking about is how well Illinois recruits. I mean,
Yeah.
they are really good evaluators. They put them, that's not your old Illinois where that's a 3-9 team. That's a staff that knows how to evaluate, knows how to recruit. And there's going to be a lot of guys watching Barnett as a senior.
Absolutely, especially with him coming back to full strength, and that's probably something you're going to have to watch. But Alabama jumped on him early, offered back in February, got him on campus during the spring, and they really liked him a lot. And then Rael Kelly, didn't have a ton of offers. Rutgers offered him, kind of not late, but they offered him. He took an official visit there in June and went ahead and committed. This is a big defensive back, almost 6'4", 186 pounds. Went to the Under Armour camp back in late April, ran a 4.49 in the 40. And when you have a secondary class like Alabama has right now, Jordan Edmonds, Zion Gibson, hoping for Jira Edwards. That's an elite group, and you got to know that those are guys that are going to have good NIL packages on the table. So if you can go get a guy that you've evaluated, that you have complete trust in, trust us, there are guys that are ranked 4 stars that Alabama decided to pass on to go after this kid, and I don't think it was necessarily from an NIL money situation. I think it was because they liked him better. So I think at some point you got to trust this staff as far as their evaluations and who they're going after. And in some cases, they do have to go after guys that are going to cost a little bit less money.
Yeah, and to each his own as it comes to recruiting. It's like picking a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Everybody has what they like. Mo Linquist has a type. And I mean, I was telling, like, the one thing that stands out to me about these 3 guys is anybody that watched the film was only complimentary. If you go straight to the stars, and the stars are premature because, again, they'll be finalized in February. Another thing about the stars, like, you focus on the senior class when it's their time. And they just started focusing on 2026 in February. That's primarily when you start digging deep because you want to give 2025 their due diligence. There's still 6-7 months to this. I mean, JJ Finch got a Navy All-American offer. That's not just something they're going to sling out there. They've got a good reputation. The guy's at a different level. Rusty Menzel was at the FBU camp, and I was texting with him Sunday. I said, hey, he just moved his announcement to 10 a.m. Somebody tweeted out. Rusty said, it's 9:20. Rusty said, Tim, he's out here working out. He is at working out. He left a practice field at where he had nothing to prove. He just been going there most of his life. He left that practice field to go and commit. Just a different guy to handle. But if you watch the film and if you just look at the vitals, I mean, hey, I've got a 6'3" plus safety that can run. He's a sub 4.5 guy. He's from Winton Woods. Hey, that's a really good defense. I watched them almost every game last year because of Justin Hills and Cam Calhoun. They get after it. Very good defense, fun team to watch. So you watch him. He's aggressive. He can run. He's tall. I'm not sure there's not a lot to like. Barnett, like you said, coming off an injury-shortened season, but the 3 games he played, powerful, fast, has all that stuff you're looking for. So I think there's going to be some guys that you're going to see some movement. And I think, like you said, you're going to mix in some high-ranked guys with some lower-ranked guys. That's just recruiting right now, and it's kind of always been recruiting. And, of course, there was the Saban benefit when we did the rankings. Andrew, let's move on to the visitors this week. Lively bunch. Been waiting for a long time to see the biggest names in the state of Alabama. 3 5-stars showed up. Sadarian Morgan, Anthony Jones, and Xavier Kroll. Just overall, before we break them down one by one, overall the feedback we saw, the interaction we saw, the Twitter stuff we saw on social, and what we heard. And we'll go over each of them one by one afterwards.
Yeah, obviously this was a weekend that we've talked about for several months because all of these guys, I think besides Tank, had set their official visit for the final weekend of summer visits, months ago, Sadarian and Kroll especially. So, a lot of eyes were on it. How is Alabama going to be able to finish in-state wise this cycle after only signing 2 last year? And we've talked about it for the last couple of years. It's not necessarily, in-state. You're trying to get the best players, possible in your class, and you're dealing with NIL. There's a lot of different factors that are involved these days, but Alabama wanted to, do everything they can this weekend to make these guys feel at home, that they felt wanted, and obviously they brought in. Nick Saban was on campus for a day or 2, so I think that was really really big because those guys growing up in the state of Alabama, all 3 of them, Alabama fans their entire life. What have they known about the University of Alabama since they were born? Nick Saban, and getting a chance to sit down and talk to him, even just for a few minutes. And it was the first time, all 3 of them had a chance to really talk to him. They couple of them had met him before, had taken a photo with him before, but had never really interacted before. So that was really big for each one of them, but not only for them, but for their families who are also all Alabama fans as well.
Darian Morgan, we didn't wait. He's got a decision coming up here. Was it in 9 days? Let me see. Says committing
Next
July
Wednesday.
2nd, which is next Wednesday. We didn't wait long. We heard enough to put in our RPM and our prediction, so to speak, our crystal ball that Bama did what it needed to do with Sedarian. Obviously, great relationship with Shep. Ryan Williams is going to jump in and help them recruit, and just everybody on that feel pretty good about where Alabama sits with still 9 days to go.
Yeah, and everybody knows a lot can change in the next week. But I think after this weekend, him being back in Tuscaloosa, being around the coaching staff, was with Brian Williams and Derek Meadows throughout the weekend. I think he feels really comfortable there. Family are all Alabama fans, but I talked to him yesterday, and he said, this is going to be the hardest decision of my life. I've got a lot of schools that really want me. They've shown me what they can do for me, what I can do for them, and each one of them has done a great job recruiting me. So it's gonna be a tough decision, but as you said, we've put in a prediction for Alabama. We don't do that. We don't do that lightly. We never have. We don't toss in predictions every other
There's a
month.
lot of discussion before we do that. Andrew and I, there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of boxes checked, and we'll be wrong. Everybody's going to
Mhm.
be wrong, but we do our due diligence before we do those. And I mean, the round table. And again, if y'all haven't checked this out, BamaOnline.com, the round table is really the place to be to discuss this stuff. It's $1 for the first month. It's constantly wanting us to put in an RPM. I think it's a running joke now because they know we put a lot of thought and effort into that pick. And you could tell by the reaction on said Morgan, they'd spent months saying he's a lock. And then we put the pick in and they went absolutely crazy. Let's move on to Xavier Kroll. Our buddy Steve Wilk-Fong had some news this morning that Texas recruiting Xavier, and it blew some minds. But you kind of knew, Andrew, they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop after Thursday. If he commits to Bama or if he commits to Texas, the other schools are going to talk to Kroll till he's signed, probably after, with the portal being what it is. But they're going to talk to this guy all the way to the finish line. I mean, that's just what you do with the 5-star running back.
We talked about this last week on the show. We said, how does an out-of-state school come into Alabama and take away one of the best players in the state that may have grown up an Alabama fan or may have grown up an Auburn fan. You make a deal that it's very hard to turn down, and we feel like that's going to be happening with several guys, not just Xavier Kroll, but guys in this class, guys in the next class, and into the future. And Texas is a school that has recruited Xavier for a while, and there's some other programs that are involved. But for those that follow Xavier Kroll's recruitment, they follow BOL. I think it's very easy to just say this is a guy that's a done deal to Alabama. He's going there. It's over. Alabama's the place. He took the final visit to Alabama. But why hasn't BOL submitted an RPM? As we talked about with Sedarian, yet we're just kind of waiting to kind of see how it plays out over the next 24, 48 hours, because there's certainly some ongoing discussion still happening. Some schools that are certainly trying to do everything they can to pull him out of the state. Alabama did a good job with him this weekend, but I don't think it's necessarily a done deal quite yet. And I think we might not know that until a day or two. So
yeah, there's not a rut for us.
He had a great visit, but it's obviously been pretty quiet since that trip.
For us, it's not a rush. We want to be right. We don't want to be rushed. We're the same way with the news. We want to be right. You can throw it out there, which happens a lot, especially on social and other channels. We just want to be right and bring the actor, because that's what we want the subscribers, and we want you to listen to us. We know your time's valuable, your money's valuable. We want you to trust us and give you, everything we can. And it's a tricky game. I mean, it's a very fluid is a running joke. Also, it is a fluid situation with Kroll. We think Alabama's good right now. Texas certainly not giving up Georgia. Nobody's going to give up. If these type kids are talking to schools they're going to talk to them until the very finish line. And also, as we've learned with this current Alabama team, if you miss the first time, you don't have to miss the second time. And we've seen that with Kelby Collins, LT Overton, Damani Jackson. The portal plays a big role. All right, let's get to the man of mystery here. Anthony Tank Jones, guy that's, got offers from everybody. Pretty much could call and name his school. Visit went good, obviously. We really don't know because he hasn't set a date. He was quiet about his official visitors, hasn't really set a date. We're thinking it might be before the school year starts. He can take his time. He could commit tonight. He can do anything he wants to, but certainly a guy Alabama rolled out the red carpet for.
Yeah, another guy that had a chance to spend some time with Coach Saban. And going back to Coach Saban, and we hadn't talked to Tank yet. I know he did a national story, but talking to Cedarian Morgan, I asked Cedarian, I said, was Coach Saban really trying to recruit you? What all was he saying to you guys during that experience? He said, no, he wasn't really recruiting me. He was just talking about, coaching at Alabama, growing where he grew up, how his parents raised him and turned him into the coach. So Coach Saban was basically there talking about himself and talking about the Alabama program rather than trying to recruit these guys to the university. And Tank Jones is one of these players that Nick Saban actually offered back in 2023. So that was that was one of the original offers in this 2026 class for one of the best players in the country. And this was also the first time that Tank had a real opportunity to sit down and talk to Coach Saban. So I know that was a special moment for him and his family, but he is a 6'4", 260-pound edge rusher who had a terrific junior season. He's a guy that can potentially play the wolf, can be a bandit. Alabama sees him basically as just a guy that can come off the edge. 16 sacks as a junior, but a lot of schools pushing for him: Oregon, A&M, Auburn, Miami. But Alabama would love to keep him home. I think they felt like they did a really good job. But as we've kind of said, he's a man of mystery. He doesn't reveal a lot, not to the media, but also not to coaching staffs. He keeps things pretty tight-lipped, even talking to them, saying he doesn't tell them, "You guys are in the lead. This team's in the lead. I need this or I need that." He just keeps it very even keel, and you just kind of have to wait to see how this transpires. But supposed to talk to his father later today, and we'll have an update on Bama Online hopefully this afternoon. But he is looking at like he'll make a decision before his senior season. I would expect sometime in July, but as you said, it could happen tonight for all we know.
And for you guys and gals watching, please do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't yet. We appreciate it. We're trying to close in on 12,000 followers. This is going to be something we keep up the rest of the year. You're going to have team coverage. Charlie Potter is back from Japan. Charlie survived. Japan survived. We weren't sure about both of those things happening at the same time. We got Blake Byler, who does a great job for us, touches on recruiting, baseball, basketball. We're going to have basketball recruiting shows, which I think is going to be fantastic this year because there's so much changeover from last year. And, of course, Bama football to go with it. The thing that stands out to me the most about Tank was they kind of announced Saban was there, right? Wasn't the three-point stance the first social media we saw? Was that his dad in the three-point stance that was Saban's looking at him and smiling? His dad's down in the three-point stance, and everybody's like, holy crap, Saban is here. Anyways, good, fruitful, what you wanted. Alabama did everything they could with the three in-state guys. None of them are missed. None of them. They've all knew what they needed to see before they went there. Now, parents get answers, academics, and all that stuff, and they get the whole red carpet. So let's talk about two guys who have told us they're shutting down their recruitment. Because I know everybody looks for commitments and they look to receive flips, but you also want to keep people from flipping. Chris Booker's a guy. Now, let's talk about 3 stars. 3 stars, no big offers. What's Bama doing? Taking the kid from Georgia. Georgia didn't want. Bama commits him. Georgia does want him really bad. Florida wants him really bad. Ole Miss wants him really bad. Stock has been up, but he took his official visit. We've been waiting on that and told us he's going to shut it down, Andrew.
Yeah, and we had heard behind the scenes that not only were these schools recruiting him, but they were making significant pushes to try to flip him away from Alabama. But we wanted to see how the official visit went this weekend. I had a chance to talk to Chris on Sunday evening, and he said, I'm shutting it down. This is where I want to be. Alabama has the best of everything, and I mean, really named everything inside the program, from the coaches to the quality coaches to the quality control coaches to the basically to all the way to the janitor staff. So this is a guy that's completely bought in with Alabama. And I think that Coach Cap, Courtney Morgan, and those guys did a really good job of jumping in on him very early. They offered him at junior day back in February before he had really any other offers. Had some small school offers, but then you saw the Georgias and Ole Misses and Florida's really start pursuing them. But 6'4", 290 pounds, can move up and down the offensive line. See him more as an interior guy playing guard. But there were some schools that had also talked to him about tackle. Georgia had talked to him about playing tackle. This position, he plays left tackle in high school, but he's comfortable playing wherever Alabama needs him to play. So getting him to really lock in and shut things down, really good for the offensive line, because they only have one other offensive line commitment in Sam Utu from California. Another very solid commitment for the Crimson Tide, but getting Booker to shut things down was big. And then Zion Gibson.
You just jumped before I said his name.
Oh, sorry. I'll say Zion Gibson, and then
we've switched roles. We switched roles.
You can talk about it.
I don't even have a black hat handy. Go ahead, take it. I'm kidding with you. Go ahead. Zion Gibson locked it down. Zion Gibson very similar to Booker in the extent that he took visits, Andrew. Obviously, Tennessee has put the full court press on him. Had a lot of schools, Ole Miss, Tennessee, both of them were two that stood out, took visits, came to Tuscaloosa, talked to Mo, said he's locking it down and he's done.
Yeah, Zion's, Gadsden City kid. Shout out to Gadsden, my hometown.
Hometown of Andrew Bone, baby. That's what the sign says when you go in the city limits.
And it's crazy. I hadn't lived there in 20 plus years, but hey.
Home of Brody Kroll, Cardell Williams, and Andrew Bone. Impressive.
That's what the sign says when you pull in. But Zion committed on Christmas Eve. We knew he was going to take visits during the spring and summer. Took those trips. Tennessee, really tried to do everything they could to flip him away. He was, their number one DB target for a long time, but ends up shutting things down after coming back into Tuscaloosa. This is where he wants to be. He's an Alabama fan. Great relationships with a lot of the players on the team, especially Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., who he played alongside with. So, and he was the host for Zion this weekend. I know some other schools like Tennessee, Ole Miss, maybe even Auburn are still going to kind of recruit him into the fall. But I think it's going to be tough for anyone to sway him, because he feels very comfortable with Alabama and seems to be pretty locked in, or very locked in.
Yeah, and he's an upside guy. His best football is ahead of him. I mean, it's pretty interesting with him and Dre, both of them pretty formidable backfield. But Dre hogged a lot of those balls in the air. As you saw his highlights last year, Dre was picking them off left and right, though. But obviously, a long guy, another one that's got good size, athleticism, and his best football is ahead of him. So overall, we're heading into this thing. Official visits, Bama's bringing in double digit again. The end of the road is here. A couple of these guys have committed, and we're still waiting on this week. We got Crowell's going on Thursday, and a guy we're about to talk about, Max Sutter. And we're going to have news on the Bama Line Roundtable when this show is over about Max Sutter from Illinois. And we went into this saying Bama wanted an impact tight end, an athletic guy that could kind of stretch the field. Felt good about their guys last year with Caleb Edwards, who was a highly ranked guy, and Marshall Pritchett, who we think's a big upside guy. But Max, a guy that we thought might even commit back in February, but he's finally going to get that commitment on the board Thursday to somebody, Andrew.
Yeah, we've been talking about Max Sutter since last spring, and that's when Alabama extended him an offer. He came back to Tuscaloosa for multiple games during the season. And as you mentioned, we felt like he was getting pretty close to making a decision several months ago, but went through the process, and schools made a big run at him. I mean, Illinois wanted to keep him home. Penn State, Ohio State made a, I think Ohio State, after his visit to Columbus earlier this month, felt really good about their chances with him. And not saying he's not going there, but I think him making the trip to Tuscaloosa, and we've talked about it before. I think that was orchestrated not only by Alabama, but feel like that was orchestrated by the Sutters as well. They knew going into the summer that Alabama was at the top of the list. They wanted to go through this process, then get to this Alabama visit last, make a decision this week. I think Alabama's in a pretty strong spot heading into the decision on Thursday. But yeah, I mean, they have heavily wanted to get an elite tight end in this class. He's been at the top. There have been some other tight ends that they've recruited, but he's been right there, in that top two discussion on their recruiting board, really since day one. And I think they've got a really strong chance to close the deal.
I mean, this is a guy that's by our database has visited 15 different schools, so he's did his due diligence. Iowa, again, I think anytime Iowa likes a tight end, we all buck our eyes, right? You get pretty excited. They got a great reputation there. But I agree that Ohio State offer probably slowed him down, made him just take a step, make sure that he was doing the right thing. But he's visited Alabama. Alabama's did a good job. Ole Miss has did a good job recruiting him. And again, we're gonna have more news later this afternoon after the show on the BOL Roundtable. So if you guys want to stop in and join us. Also, we just found out if you have an annual subscription, this is for you subscribers to make sure you realize there's a 2-week window to sign up. You have to fill it out. There's a post on the roundtable for the current subscribers, and you get the Athletic free. And there's no catches. You don't have to put in your email or credit card or social security number. You're good there. All right, Andrew, let's talk before we get out of here. Let's talk about some of the upcoming decisions. We're not going to get into every one where we think they're going. This isn't a huge prediction show, but we're going to show y'all how busy it's about to get. We're going to cover up till, let's say, the middle of July, because there's still more after that. But coming up this week, Thursday, as we mentioned, you got Xavier Kroll and Max Sutter. Very interesting day. Pretty exciting day for Alabama to possibly go 2-0. You don't want to go 0-2. You definitely like both these guys to be in there. Like you would like for both of these guys to be in their class.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a really big day for Alabama on Thursday if they can get these two guys on board. Obviously some disappointment for Alabama fans yesterday when we saw Titan Davis, one of their top defensive line targets, end up going to Michigan. But if you can get Xavier Kroll and and Max Sutter this week, that would certainly be a really exciting day. And with Sutter, I don't know if Alabama's going to take a second tight end. They had Roman Voss that announced from Minnesota yesterday, but I think that they would like to try to get Sutter. It could be done after that. We'll kind of see what happens over the next several months, but they can get Sutter. They'll probably be pretty ecstatic about that situation.
And Bama fans and recruiting fans have to remember this isn't the only recruiting cycle going on. There's going to be a portal cycle that opens up twice. Never know what college changes might come. We've seen that in the past. They could have heavily influence. The next two guys that will be committing is Malachi Lee on Friday and Xavier Griffin on Sunday. It's been so busy we haven't even really discussed these guys, but everyone seems to have a little bit of a positive vibe with Malachi Lee, but a little apprehension because he hasn't committed. He's committing on Friday, took his last official visit to Michigan, took an unofficial visit 2 weeks ago to Georgia, which really usually is the telltale, like, he went back for an unofficial. Chuck McDonald did that last year, official, unofficial. That usually means to a commitment, but we have not heard he's a lock anywhere at this stage.
Yeah, he's coming off the final visit to Michigan, who going into the summer perceived as the leader, as the team to beat. But Alabama and Georgia have both done a good job recruiting him. Georgia does have several offensive line commitments. Alabama does not have a tackle commitment just yet, even though I think Sam Utu could play tackle. But I think Alabama would certainly like to get Lee on board, but I just it's hard to gauge exactly which way he's leaning at this point. And I think Alabama wants to sign it or add at least one tackle. They have Malachi Lee, Wilson Zaire, who's going to be announcing in sometime in July. But if they can get one of those two guys, they'll be extremely happy. But Lee seems like a toss up to me. I mean, I would probably lean Michigan, but um, he's keeping people guessing right now.
Xavier Griffin, that's another man kind of keeping people guessing. The thing about Xavier that really throws a curveball is everyone assumed it was highest NIL when he committed to USC. But when he decommitted, it obviously wasn't the highest NIL. USC's been very active, but they have 31 commitments. They've been in some public bidding war, which is kind of hilarious. Like people are covering it like a tennis match. They had that with Luke Waffle last week. So obviously a guy, Texas, Ohio State, went to FSU this weekend. Um, Connections to Alabama, probably too early to call, but we'll be digging in. But again, that's how busy it is. We haven't really been able just to focus on these guys with so much happening. And again, 3 commitments since Sunday. 3 kids chose other schools. All the visitors. We had Nuggets up Sunday night. Just a ton of action happening, Andrew. But some quick thoughts on Xavier with a little less than a week to go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of eyes are going to be on him. Alabama fans, he's been a fan favorite on the, on the BOL boards for the last several months, and his family, all Alabama fans. Grandfather works in Tuscaloosa, so we'll see. I mean, he talked about the relationship with the players on the team stronger than than any other place that he has visited. But I think with going back to USC and making those NIL offers, these ridiculous NIL offers to a lot of these players, it kind of changes the reality. A lot of people just are expecting this. Every other school has these high numbers too that they're going to be able to push out there, but that's not always the case. They're trying to build an entire roster rather than just building one player. So I think with Xavier, you gotta kind of have to wait and see. What's Texas going to do? What's Florida State going to do? What's Ohio State going to do in this recruitment? And how much of a factor is that going to play here at the end? But Alabama wants him. They likely made a very fair offer to him, and I think they hope that being a lifelong fan and having connections on the team and being a little bit closer to home plays out in the end. Plus, he's got that positional flexibility. We've talked about him being a wolf, but he could also be an inside linebacker. He's 6'3", 205, 210 pounds right now, sort of the same size as Jahad Campbell when he was coming out.
Very similar.
High
very
school.
similar.
So you got a guy that can absolutely fly, similar to Jahad, and can move around. So that gives you a little bit of more positional flexibility, and maybe he's going to spend a little bit more money on him.
The next 3 we'll just briefly get on before we get out of here. We'll touch on Brian Williams, wide receiver from Florida, is committing on July 1st. We have an RPM and crystal ball in for them. Sadarian Morgan commits the next day. We've said earlier in the show, CD, we got our RPM and our crystal ball in. The next one's a little bit more tentative. Jarrah Edwards, who it's kind of been interesting. He's a 5-star guy. We got a prediction and an RPM. And for those not familiar, that is our crystal ball where we think he's going to go. We put that in because he canceled his other officials. Another quiet guy, big time safety prospect that we're looking at. But we got RPMs and predictions in for all 3. With that in mind, you guys check us out at BamaOnline.com. We're heading there right now. We have the show up. We got recruiting updates. Blake Byler has stuff coming. Andrew has stuff coming. We'll have nuggets and everything else coming up. And please do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. Y'all are doing great. Andrew, give him that thumbs up. That's the thumb. You got to get that right angle. Otherwise, we're like, what's wrong with it? Oh, now I see. So give us that thumbs up. We appreciate y'all watching the show. We know your time is valuable and you have a lot of options. Andrew Bone, get us out of here.
Yeah, thanks for watching the show. Going to be an exciting week, exciting few weeks. So go check us out at BamaOnline.com, and we'll see you on our message board. That's where we are every single day. You can talk to us directly. We're answering questions all day, all night. So come check us out, and I appreciate you watching the show.
All right. See you guys. Have a good week and roll Tide.